7 Moscow Pullman, KNWV 90.5.
Good evening, everybody. Today is October 3rd, Monday, and this is a regular Moscow Council meeting. We'll start out with Catherine.
Yes, would you please say the pledge with me? And everyone else. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Catherine.
Hey, you're welcome.
The next order of the business, even though it is not on the schedule here, is Domestic Violence Awareness Month proclamation that I'm going to read to everybody. Whereas domestic violence is a pattern of abusive behavior in intimate relationships used by one partner to exert power and gain control over the other, and whereas domestic violence can involve physical, sexual, emotional, economic, or psychological threats or actions, and whereas anyone can be a victim of domestic violence regardless of age, gender, economic status, race, religion, sexual orientation, or education, and whereas the statistics are sobering, 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men in the United States have experienced some form of physical violence by an intimate partner. On a typical day, domestic violence hotlines receive approximately 21,000 calls, an average close to 15 calls every minute. The presence of a gun in a home during a domestic violence incident increases the risk of homicide by 500%. Whereas due to reduced funding and other resources, domestic violence programs are strained to keep up with demands for services. And whereas growing up in a violent home can be a significant negative factor in children's development, and whereas Alternatives to Violence of the Palouse works with law enforcement and other local partners to provide help, including shelter to people in Latah and Whitman counties who are affected by domestic violence. And whereas awareness of the problem is the first step, but it is incumbent on all of us to work together to prevent domestic violence, to respond to the needs of victims, to speak out, and to help ensure that offenders are held accountable. Now, therefore, I, Bill Lambert, the Mayor of the City of Moscow, do hereby proclaim October 6, 2016 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in Moscow, and I urge all citizens to help end domestic violence. With us tonight is Hayden Hensley from Alternatives to Violence. Hayden, we got a proclamation to give him, and Hayden's also going to say a few words. Say a few words, step right up the podium here.
Mayor Lambert, members of the council, thank you for recognizing National Domestic Violence Awareness Month here in Moscow. I'm Hayden Hensley, as he mentioned, with Alternatives to Violence of the Palouse. We appreciate the time that we have in front of the City Council to speak briefly about family violence. For over 35 years, Alternatives to Violence of the Palouse has opened its doors to victims and survivors of family violence, sexual assault, stalking, and abuse. In some respects, things have changed a lot in that time. As a community, we've stepped up and admitted and recognized that family violence is not rare and it is not private. Violence does not exist in a vacuum. We all know that domestic violence has a long reach, not just for the victims, but for the rest of society. The ripple effect of violence impacts everyone. Just look at the results from the Adverse Childhood Experience Studies, the ACEs, and how trauma links to truancy and discipline issues in high schools and lower schools. The past decade has seen over 3,600 clients walk through Alternatives to Violence's doors. With the help of community members like you all, we've provided 14,000 bed nights in our secure shelter, answered over 30,000 hotline calls, and delivered nearly 25,000 advocacy-based counseling sessions. 10 years from now, I hope those numbers are lower. In fact, I hope I'm not here. I hope that our job doesn't exist and that domestic violence has been eradicated. But that's not going to be a reality without continued effort and action by wonderful people like you all. Beyond donations, we're always looking for volunteers and board members, or you can run a cell phone drive. Even that old cell phone without a plan attached to it can still be used to dial 911 and help get emergency help. Simply following our Facebook page and sharing our posts can help. Or you can grab some of our brochures and keep them in your offices. Seemingly small actions like these can set the tone in our community that show we support victims of gender and power-based violence and that we hold offenders accountable. Finally, if you have a meeting of any type, community, faith, educational, etc., we're always happy to give presentations to ensure that good people like you all know how to support a victim or survivor of abuse. It's on all of us to help end domestic violence here in the Palouse. And I appreciate your help with that. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Hayden. Catherine's got a question.
I just wanted to let you know, I was teaching out in Deary 13 years ago, and I asked Alternatives to Violence at the Palouse to come to my 11th grade for a 2-day workshop, and they came out, and they did a workshop, and we rewrote some of the violent scenes in The Great Gatsby, and they did a wonderful job, and it was the first time for a lot of those kids to be able to, because they led the whole workshop, to actually think about domestic violence and think of situations that they hadn't realized were violent. And so I really appreciated that you all came out, and there was no charge. They just came.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, all of our services are free, and I really appreciate you mentioning that. We actually just secured the Stevens Grant here on the Palouse, which helps us get into high schools more, especially rural high schools, to talk about those. And that's, do you still have those scenes?
Do I still what?
Have the scenes that you rewrote in Great Gatsby?
No, but I can show you where I did them.
Oh, that would be brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll leave you with my card.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Sure.
Does anybody else have any questions? Or
Well, Hayden, thank you so much for the work that Alternatives to Violence has done here in our community for decades. It's been here for a long, long time. When I served on United Way Board, they were one of the groups that we always provided funding for. And the only way we're ever going to stomp out domestic violence is if we all work together on it. It's just one of those things. We need to continue to do that. And so the education in schools is a huge, huge start to things. So thank you so much for your work. Other questions for Hayden? Thank you, Hayden.
all right, thank you all. Appreciate it.
Okay, we will move on to the next item, which is a consent agenda.
I would move approval of the consent agenda with the exception of item B for later discussion.
Okay.
Second?
Okay, we've got a motion by Art and a second by Catherine to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item B, Heart of the Arts. I'll start the roll, John.
Aye.
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 Okay, you have the floor, Art, for item B.
The reason for pulling the Heart of the Arts management agreement issue is less to discuss the attributes or deficiencies of the contract, of which I see no deficiencies. It's all attributes. But I did think that the mission and the implementation of the management plan by Heart of the Arts and their ongoing efforts with the 1912 Center are so good they deserve more of a hearing to espouse a little bit of what goes on with the 1912 Center and sort of give a pat on the back to the Heart of the Arts company. So, Jay, would you like to come up and give us a quick overview of where we are?
Jay, if you would tell us what your name is, sir. We all know you, but so the audience does and where you live, it'd be awesome.
Okay, my name is Jay Pengilly. I live at 1136 North Mountain View Road, Moscow, Idaho. I am president of the board of directors of Heart of the Arts, and we are an all-volunteer board, though we have paid staff, and we're very happy to be working with the city to carry on for the next 5 years of our contract what we've been doing in the last 10 years. And we're very proud of what we've done there. We just completed all of the window installations, which has been driving us all crazy for 10 years. And with all those sheets of plywood up there that kept blowing out in the wind and had things painted on them or whatever, so we're very happy to have that done. And now we're looking forward to moving up into the second level of the building above the great room and above the Fisk room and so on, where currently there isn't a lot there, but there's a lot of potential there. We have the historic classroom, and we don't quite know what all we're going to be doing there. We had a retreat about a month ago to sort of look at, to bring all our board we have quite a few new board members this year, so we got them all on board, and everybody now has a good sense of what the building is, and we're looking at different ideas. We've done in the past, we've done a lot of stakeholder gatherings and gathered a lot of information, so we have a lot of ideas and a lot of information, and now it's just sort of a matter of finding the money, the donations to make that doable. We're very grateful for the city for the support that they give us to help us keep this going. We have about 280, I think last year we had about 280 individual special events, and this doesn't even include the two-day-a-week senior lunches, and it doesn't include like the Friendly Neighbors meeting hall, and it doesn't include a lot of the regular sorts of things that happen in there, like the martial arts and Tai Chi and other things. This is just separate events like weddings, celebrations of various sorts, meetings, city meetings, university meetings, proms, what have you. And so we feel like that the 1912 Center provides a great resource for the community as a community center, and we're very, as I say, we're very proud of what we do there and what we offer and how we're serving the community by bringing this building to fruition as a fully built-out building. That's our goal, of course. We're very lucky. I just constantly bless our luck that we have Jenny Kostroff as our executive director. She's, more ebullient than I am at a meeting like this, and she'll be coming to you at our next regular report date to give you more specific information on what we do and how we're proceeding. But we're very happy to have her. She has a great vision of the building. She's very personable, and she keeps things moving for us. As an all-volunteer board, of course, we have our own personal lives to worry about, and Jenny keeps everything moving. We also have between 4 and 6 other staff members that keeps the building running, and we finished a lot of work this year. Not only did we replace the windows, but we replaced a lot of the flooring on that main level there. Since Heart of the Arts took over the building in the spring of 2003, I believe it was, we've expanded the usable space in the building by about 2,000 square feet. And the building is constantly being used any time of the day that we're open. There's something happening somewhere in the building, and so there we have it.
Well, Jay, the 1912 building has turned into a real jewel, and the Heart of the Arts has done a wonderful job with it. And the enthusiasm that Jenny Kostroff has is absolute. I don't know if anybody could do it quite as good as Jenny. She is dynamic in how she does things, and so it's a treasure for our whole community.
Thank you, Mayor.
Well, I don't have anything more, so with that, I would move approval of item B on the consent agenda.
Second, yeah. Okay, we got a motion by Art and a second by Jim to approve item B on the consent agenda. We'll start to roll with Catherine. Thank you so much, Jay.
You're second. Sorry. Do it again.
Aye.
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 Okay, and we will move on to item number 2. It's the staff recognition report. Gary, do you have anything tonight for us?
Good evening, sir.
Okay, item number 3, mayor's appointments. I do not have any tonight. Item number 4, public comment and mayor's response period. This is a period of time that we allow 15 minutes for the public to speak about various issues, as long as they are not on the agenda tonight, or as long as they are not in front of Planning and Zoning or the Board of Adjustments. And those that would like to speak, you've got 3 minutes. Please come up, state your name and address, and let us know what's on your mind.
Nels Reese, 308 South Hayes, still the same place I was
Hello, Nels.
3 weeks ago. Yeah. And the 1912 building. After this building right here, that's my favorite building. So I think if you think about it, I'm going to waste 30 seconds of my time, but I don't think Jenny would let happen to this building what happened to the Civic down in Lewiston. She knows where the leaks are, and so I think you've already spoken about her skill, but she's all over that building, and I'm sorry that the folks in Lewiston didn't pay attention to their leaks in that same way. Well, I'm here representing the Citizens for a Livable Community, and we're going to make Jeff Speck and his Walkable City a step or two more famous. But I'm going to hang in with where we were last meeting to continue that ever-present issue of cars and what we're going to do with them. Did we in our comp plan or in our Moscow multimodal plan, did we really consider the issue of induced demand? That's a question that I'm not going to try and answer, but it's certainly a question that we all need to think about. Will a new big bridge on 3rd Street solve all the problems, or will we just have a very, very busy street? But before we try and understand that induced demand, I just thought I'd take a minute to talk about the numbers on 3rd Street. And I want to be clear that I'm not just talking about 3rd Street. I'm talking about 6th and 3rd and D. There's little difference between the three of them are neighborhood collectors. So if we talk about those streets, could we just take a minute and look at the reported traffic figures for those three Central City neighborhood collectors? I'm going to take the liberty of calling them all collectors as opposed to arterials, okay? First, as reported in a City of Moscow traffic document in 2008 and again in 2011, and third, in figure 4-3 of the multimodal plan. You see the figures down there, and I would ask you, and I don't expect an answer tonight, but if you want to email me in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to have to miss the next meeting because I'm out of town. I'm taking a group to New York City, but if you look at that 6th Street, in 2008, it was reported 9,910 cars. In 2011, the same, 9,910. In the multimodal report, on the map at 4.3, it's at 6,300. Why is that? How is it that 6 years later, we have less cars? 3rd Street, 8,368 in both 2008 and 2011. 5,000 cars in 2014? Are you kidding me? You guys probably know more about the multimodal plan than I do. They didn't ask a lot. They didn't ask my opinion a lot about it. But look at D Street, 6,644 cars in 2008, 6,261 in 2011, 6,200 in 2014. That should, at least, there should be a little question mark. It does give one pause to understand why figures from the city in 2008 and 2011 are somewhat different from the figures 3 years later, and not larger, as one might suspect in a growing city, but smaller in every case. I presume that each of you, again, probably know more about this one than me, but I'd like an answer on why the multimodal plan reported something quite different than the city had reported a few years before. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Nils. And just for the record, I gave you an extra 1 minute, so your 30
Thank
seconds
you very
wasn't
much.
wasting. You actually got an extra 30 seconds.
And the community center thanks you, too.
Thank you, Nils. Next.
Mayor Lambert, council members, Paul Kimmel, 1037 4 Mile Road, Viola, outside the area of impact. Just want to make that clear.
Hi, Paul.
I'm here tonight to cordially invite you to our 2016 Palouse Basin Water Summit. First of all, I want to thank you for your continuing support for this annual conversation that we have around water. It's a celebration, it's an engagement, it's a challenge, it's a lot of different things, and it needs to be. Water is a precious commodity here, as we all know. And this is our way of keeping the community engaged in the water issue. This year, we're really pleased to have with us an internationally acclaimed water advocate and former UN envoy on water, Maud Barlow. And she'll talk about some of her experiences around the world with water, and, you know, it kind of puts it on perspective. We have very little to complain about and much to be grateful for. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we collaborate, just like we do on many other issues across the basin, on water. And I think it really demonstrates that collective will to figure this problem out. We'll again have our State of the Basin report from Steve Robichon. We'll get an update on our alternative water supply project with Anchor QEA Consultants, which will be pretty interesting and enlightening. Kind of a follow-on to some of the work that the City of Moscow did several years ago, looking at some alternative supply sites on the mountain. We'll also do some engagement with the attendees at the summit, kind of get that kind of test some sentiment and understanding and awareness of the basin as well. And then we'll have a Y-scape panel, and special thanks to Nicole Baker and the great work she does on behalf of the city and the basin around Y-scaping. She's fabulous to work with, period. So we're very grateful. Thank you again, and hope to see you Wednesday. We're at the Schweitzer Event Center, 4:30. And we'll run till 8 o'clock. Join us. We'll have a book signing with our keynote as well, Maud. And just appreciate all the support. So thank you.
Paul, I look forward to being there. I will definitely be there. I look forward to the event. Catherine?
I was just curious how attendance has changed over the years.
You know, we and Councilman Steed always challenges us. We measure our attendees. So we have a scorecard, as well as Dr. Allison Beal King also asks questions about, are you a community member, are you a student, are you an elected official, an agency sort of person? So we have a good sense. And, you know, we're about half community members, a lot of students, and partly some of the water programs require their college students to attend. And that's okay. We'd love to see more new faces every year. Given that we're a transient communities, you know, we always have a fresh crop of students here to engage with that aren't aware of our water situation. So it's a good mix.
And like 300 or?
Yeah, we can average 300, 250, sometimes more than 300. So, and the Schweitzer Event Center is a great place. You know, we have lots of audio visuals to go with it. So it's a lot of fun, and we want it to be really interactive. So thank you.
Other questions for Paul? Thank you so much, Paul.
Thank you.
Others that would like to come up and make comment? Seeing none, we will move on to our next item, which is Citizens Commission Report, Parks and Rec Commission. We have Dwight, as well as the chair, Nancy Tribble, going to give us a little presentation, so we're looking forward to it.
Well, good evening. Giving you your annual report from the Parks and Recreation Commission, and I would like to introduce Nancy Tribble, the chair of the commission.
Hi, Nancy.
Forward?
Yeah.
Okay.
To the right.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Nancy Tribble. I live at 922 Clay Court, Moscow. And I'm looking forward to giving you a brief report tonight. I love being on this commission. You know, the parks and the paths are the number one reason why my husband and I chose to move from Oregon to Moscow, Idaho. We spent about 2 years trying to decide where we were going to relocate, and we knew we'd be moving out of Oregon. So we went on about a 2-year tour, checking places out. And actually, Paul was the chamber executive director the first day we came to Moscow. And standing on the main street, I told Owen, I said, this is it. So we took a subscription to the Daily News. About 2 years, we were watching the newspaper to see what all the hot topics were. And I was so impressed with the parks and the paths and the importance of keeping green space balanced, of still having some growth. So I just want you to know that this Parks Department and our trails brought us over from Oregon. Was our number one, and we've not been disappointed. So, on our Parks and Recreation Commission, we have Justin Minden, who's coaching over there, me swinging around with fish in Seattle. We have Damon Burton, Susan Steele, and actually she's the reason that I got on the Parks Commission when you had it here in the City Hall. And she caught my eye and got me signed up. We have Arch Harner, Ted Keisha, Robbie Cooper, Jacqueline Wallace, Mark Heinlein, and we have a really good time, and we really appreciate the effort that our recommendations, the time that you take with them. Our mission statement is that the department, in partnership with our citizens, enriches Moscow's quality of life by providing well-designed and properly maintained parks and recreational opportunities for all citizens. Services include development and maintenance of parks and community forestry, recreational sports facilities, playgrounds, trails, open spaces, city office buildings, in addition to offering a vast array of individual and group recreation programs. Our issues and projects. Presently, our park naming process for Peekaboo Park, reviewed and recommended official design for Milton Arthur Park for City Council consideration, reviewed and recommended official design for Lola Clyde Park, our ongoing updates on downtown restroom facility, participated in the annual Parks and Facilities Tour, and currently exploring for a suitable site for another community garden. And if any of you haven't been out to our community garden at the Herc Center, swing by sometime. It is impressive. I believe we've won a few awards. Dwight, for that? Yeah, we've won an award for that. We'll be reviewing the 2016 Youth Scholarship stats and policy and recommending any policy changes. Participated in ongoing review of Parks and Recreation Master Plan adopted by the Council in 2014. Participated in a dedication and grand opening of the Moscow School District community playfields, hosted an information table at the Farmers Market, and currently exploring a feasibility of the Parks and Recreation Foundation. Any questions on that or any of those?
We'll share about the foundation.
Okay. Well, we are looking at a foundation where private citizens can donate funds to a foundation to enhance and work with the Parks Department, where they're not feeling that they really feel comfortable donating money to a city municipality, because the rules and regulations on what cities have to go through to build parks and other municipalities is different than going out and having them privately build. And a lot of communities have foundations for their parks. And we find that people who would like to donate money are more willing to donate and put it in trust for all of the energies to go to a specific park or specific works. So developing a foundation is truly its own work, and so we have a task force. We're looking into it, and definitely when we get further down the road, we'll be bringing it to the city as well.
Thank you.
Ongoing review of the Moscow School District community ball fields, ongoing monitoring of off-leash area in Mountain View Park, Moscow Charter School use of the HERC recommendations, reviewed and made recommendations for council consideration of the 1912 monument sign, and reviewed and made parkland dedication recommendations for council consideration on identity on main PUD projects. Upcoming 2017 issues and projects: continue implementation of the 2013 Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Process begins for 5-year update to the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Annual report on Youth Scholarship Program with recommendations. Upgrades to City Parks and Facilities Historical Guide, and assist in possible bond election planning. And if you have any questions as I go through this, stop me. And review and make recommendations for possible future dog park, because our current one is really overused. It really, we're such a dog-friendly community that people are really starting to ask for, we need one on the other side of town or a larger one, because this one gets really overused. Review and recommendation for addressing parks and facilities accessibility issues. Review off-leash area for policy for Mountain View Park and continued feasibility exploration for Parks and Recreation Foundation. I think I just said that. Any questions?
Well, Nancy, we appreciate what all of our commissions do, especially Parks and Rec, because we had so many fun things doing, because it's about recreation, getting people out, being able to do things from all ages and walks of life, and so it makes it very, very nice for our community.
Well, in recreation, we always think of kids and playgrounds, but we have recreation. We need it for those of us who get older, and we need to keep moving, keep the body moving and the brain working. So, definitely. Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Nancy. Okay, we will move on to the next item, which is item number 6, and it is a public hearing, proposed amendments to Title 4, Chapter 7 to amend the procedures and criteria for amendments to the PUD process. And Michael Ray, Mike, you've got the podium, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor, members of the council. So before you tonight, we have an ordinance that the Planning and Zoning Commission has been working on for the last couple months. The ordinance started with a letter that was submitted from Miss Brenda Von Wondruska regarding the ability to, she owns the Silos development on Steiner Avenue, the ability to go through a minor amendment process in order to change some of the space within the development. So this is one of the traditional mixed-use developments in town. We have very few. This is a view, I guess, looking to the south, Steiner Avenue. This is the Silos development. Really consists of about 12 multifamily apartment units. Also contains some office space as well as some retail space. And like I said, this is a mixed-use development and one of the very few that we have that have gone through the PUD process. This is kind of a typical PUD that we see in town, and it's has to do with residential subdivisions, and this is Tiempo Commons here in the center of your screen. They've gone through the PUD process in order to achieve private streets with smaller lot sizes and smaller lot widths than you'd normally see. You can see the subdivision to the north, which is primarily an R1 designation, which has a lot larger city streets and lot sizes. And so these are kind of the two distinct cases of PUDs that we have in town, the one single lot mixed use example, and then this example of the residential subdivisions that go through the PUD process. There's currently in the code we have options for minor PUD amendments and major PUD amendments. So for minor PUD amendments, if it does not meet these 11 criteria, then you're able to go through the minor amendment process in order to make deviations and approved plans of PUDs. And right now, with the minor amendment process, really just goes to the body exercising jurisdiction. So in the case of a Type 1 PUD, which is just a single lot and final approvals through Planning and Zoning Commission, it would just go before the Commission on a regular agenda item. If it was associated with a subdivision plat, which is a Type 2 PUD, then it ends up being final approval via City Council, and so it would go as a regular agenda item at a City Council meeting. And so if they meet those criteria, or if it does not meet the criteria, then they're able to go through that one unpublic hearing through the decision-making body. And then we go through the criteria that you must not meet in order to be deemed a minor amendment. A lot of it has to do with percentage of increase, and so, for instance, dwelling unit count of the approved PUD. You have a number of dwelling units of different housing types, can't exceed percentage there, floor area increases. All these would necessitate a major amendment. And so after we get through all the minor amendment criteria, we have a process to go through the major amendment. And it's really simple. You really just start from the beginning of the PUD process. And so in order to do a major amendment, looking at the PUD process, you would be going through first a neighborhood meeting, which would require a 15-day notice. Then you'd go through a public hearing before Planning and Zoning Commission, which would require a 30-day notice. And then if it's associated with a type 2 PUD, if it's associated with a subdivision plat, then you'd go preliminary PUD public hearing before the City Council, and then you go through the final PUD review by Planning and Zoning Commission, and then final review by the council if it's associated with that subdivision plat. So really you're looking at a 3-4 month process in order to just go through a major amendment of a PUD. And you'd be going back through the neighborhood meeting. Neighborhood meeting's really just to introduce the PUD concept to the public and the surrounding neighbors and the area. So we had, taken a look at Brenda's request, and as with a lot of the code amendments that we do, we had taken a look at some jurisdictions around the state as well as out of state. We looked at Post Falls, Ketchum, Haley, Sun Valley, Idaho Falls, and Kootenai County here in Idaho. Then looked over in Colorado at Mountain Village, Big Bear Lake, California, and Woodstock, Illinois, for what they do with their minor and major amendment process. And so there's some common themes that we had seen. First was typically with the minor amendments, there's administrative approval allowed with that. And so staff's able to look at the proposal and just administratively approve some of those minor deviations. Another common theme is that there's one public hearing for major amendments. Instead of starting from the beginning of the process like we do, they would just go one public hearing before the decision-making body for the original PUD. So the Commission did explore Ms. Von Wondruska's proposal. Really the issue that you have is that when you're trying to craft some language just for that one scenario, you end up adversely affecting maybe some of the other PUDs. So take, for example, the first image of the silos and just converting, maybe there's an office space on the bottom floor, the rest of the mixed-use development is a combination of maybe some offices and multifamily residential. It's in an R4 zone, so there's apartment buildings across the street and right next door. Well, it may make a lot of sense if you can just have some flexibility, as long as it's the underlying zone, as long as it's allowed use in the underlying zone, to be able to put one of those uses and interchange those uses in the development. But if you were to take, for instance, like the Tiempo Commons example, and you were to say that, well, if any of the underlying uses of that zone, which is also zoned R4, were allowed to just go into existing buildings, then you could end up with triplexes, the single-family dwellings that are converted to triplexes, and it may just, harm the underlying character of the theme of the plan unit development. And so, trying to craft the criteria around Ms. Von Wondruska's proposal really just ended up adversely affecting some of the other PUDs when we went through that thought process. And so, we did review the criteria, did review the process, and based upon that research that we conducted and just our own review of the current code language, what we'd proposed to do was shift the minor amendments to administrative approval like the other jurisdictions do, simplify the criteria to what constitutes a major amendment. So we had some redundancies there. There was some, basically 1 through 5 are pretty similar. Their wordings are a little bit different. So we were able to consolidate the 11 criteria that we currently have down to 7. So it simplified the criteria a little bit. And we are proposing to amend the major amendment process to just require one public hearing before Planning and Zoning Commission if it's a Type 2 PUD, and then one hearing before Planning and Zoning Commission, and then a hearing before Council if it's a Type 2 PUD, which is associated with a subdivision plat. And so what that would look like, I didn't do this in legislative format just because it looks like there's a lot of changes, and so this would be the clean copy of the code here. So what we would be doing is going in the minor PUD amendments at the very beginning, inserting the ability to be approved administratively by the zoning administrator. A lot of the middle language here we had kept as far as what needs to be submitted as part of the proposal. And then at the end, we had inserted a sentence that states that if the zoning administrator determines that the change may have a significant impact on the approved project, the administrator may decline to administratively approve such change and shall process the request as a major PUD amendment. So we wanted to reserve the right in order to, maybe there was something that we didn't think of that, certainly didn't meet any of the criteria, but we felt that it was going to kick it into that, it's going to be a big impact to the rest of the PUD. So the people that have already built properties or own properties within the PUD, it could adversely affect them. And so we wanted just to reserve that right in order to make that determination if it could affect the PUD adversely to go through the major amendment process.
Mike, I just want a reminder, who's the administrator for making that decision?
Be the zoning administrator, so it'd be a representative of our department.
Is that always the same person?
Ultimately be the community development director.
Oh, okay.
And then the PUD amendment procedure, so like I had mentioned before, changing that to include one public hearing for a Type 1 PUD before the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then 2 public hearings for the Type 2 PUD if in the case of a Type 2 PUD application. And then we've gone through the criteria. So it used to be a little odd wording where you'd have the criteria under the major amendment and it'd say that as long as it doesn't meet these criteria. So it seems a little backwards, and so what we've done is taken that out of the minor amendment section and put it in the major amendment section, just to be clear that if you meet any of this criteria, then you're going to end up having to go through the major amendment. And so a lot of these are similar to what we have before. With the 5% increased floor area, ratio and number of dwelling units, residential density. A lot of these haven't changed. We've just combined these and simplified these a little bit, substantially alter the phasing or timing of development, reduce or eliminate factors used to justify any density bonuses or code standard waivers granted. So that's the proposed ordinance before you. The Planning and Zoning Commission did conduct a public hearing on September 14th, and they recommended approval to the council. And staff tonight recommends the council conduct a public hearing, and upon consideration of any testimony presented, approve the ordinance under suspension of the rules, requiring 3 complete and separate readings, and that it be read by title and published by summary. And I'd certainly be able to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions for Mike before you, Art?
Yeah, is the appeal process for either the developer wants to alter the PUD or the impacted residents or other parties, same as always up through city council?
Correct.
Catherine?
My question, and unfortunately I don't remember how to pronounce her last name, but Ms. Brenda, did someone communicate with her this information? I didn't remember that part when she made the request.
Yeah, she came to a couple meetings of Planning and Zoning Commission. I did communicate to her after the fact when the commission had decided to move forward these proposed amendments, and while she didn't get the result she was looking for as far as the being classified as a minor amendment and just being able to mix match, as long as the building's already constructed and it's an underlying use for the underlying zoning district, to be able to just insert those uses, however she deems fit. Although we didn't get it into a minor amendment category, it would still be a major amendment for her, but the process would be much simpler. She would just be going through one public hearing before Planning and Zoning Commission, which right now, if you went through a minor amendment, you would be going to the Planning and Zoning Commission for one meeting, although it wouldn't be a public hearing. So the only difference would be that, instead of having to go 3-4 months and do a major amendment that we have right now, she would just be going and doing the one public hearing. So it could be accomplished in 3-4 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Other questions for Michael before I open up the public hearing? Okay, thank you, Michael. I will open the public hearing. It's 7:44. And for those that in favor would like to come up, please state your name and address. Let us know what you're thinking. Seeing nobody rush the podium for that, I will ask for any general testimony or opposition to this public hearing. Please come up. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and turn it over to council. This was heard before the admin committee, Jim,
That's
on
correct.
September 26th. Yeah, I think that Mike and his crew have done a great job of simplifying this and making it easier for people to make changes in a more expedient fashion. And if there's no further discussion, I would move that we approve this ordinance under suspension of the rules requiring 3 complete and separate readings, and it be read by title and published by summary.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion by, hang on a second, we have a motion by Jim and a second by Catherine on this. Further debate? Art had his hand up
Not
for
really
something.
debate, but I appreciate the fact that the language is also cleared up so that it reads more directly instead of an inverse, and that really should help clarify some of the matters. So I appreciate the planning and zoning and the department for taking care of that part as well.
Other comments before I call for the roll? Okay, what we've got here is a motion by Jim and a second by Catherine to approve this ordinance under the suspension of the rules requiring 3 complete and separate readings that it be read by title and published by summary. I'll start the roll with Catherine.
Aye.
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 Okay, and we will move on. I will read the ordinance, which is 2016-14. An ordinance of the City of Moscow, Idaho, a municipal corporation of the State of Idaho, providing for the amendment of Moscow City Code Title 4, Chapter 7, amending the minor and major amendment procedures for planning unit developments, providing that the provisions of this ordinance be deemed severable, and providing for this ordinance to be in full force and effect from the date of its passage, approval, and publication according to law. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the next item, which is item number 7. Request for sponsorship in North Idaho Legislative Tour. Gary Riedner will present. Gary, you have the podium, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. I will just take this opportunity to give a very brief background that the City of Moscow engages the Idaho legislature through various ways throughout the year. One of the ways that we're able to engage them, besides the annual AIC Day at the Elected Officials Day at the Legislature, and various and sundry participation in boards and assistance, technical assistance to AIC. One of the ways we engage them is every several years when there is a legislative election, the North Idaho Chamber of Commerce would bring the entire legislature north on a charter plane, and either Coeur d'Alene once every 4 years, Moscow and Lewiston once every 4 years, would be able to take a look, interact with these legislators, sometimes for the very first time that some of these folks would ever make it to North Idaho. So it was very instructive to kind of show them around. Usually the cities would have some time, the university would have some time, counties would have some time, so on and so forth. So that's changed a little bit, and I'll leave it up to Paul Kimmel to explain why the North Idaho Legislative or North Idaho Chamber of Commerce is no longer running the operation, but it's a little bit, it changed over the last couple of years, and they are seeking sponsorships to help defray the costs of bringing the legislators up and taking care of them while they're here. So as you can see in your packet, if the council decides that it does wish to sponsor one of these activities, that the recommendation would be that those funds be allocated from legislative reserve or non-prioritized projects in the legislative budget. So with that, I would ask Paul to come forward.
Thank you, Gary. Mayor, council members, you have in your packet in front of you, and I had a chance to discuss this with your Public Works Finance Committee last week. But the North Idaho Legislative Tour is really a unique opportunity that I'm not aware of many states having the ability to bring 90+% of the state legislators to a region of their state for essentially a captive audience for an extended period of time. The genesis of this was a group called the North Idaho Chamber of Commerce, and this was I served on that. Earl Bennett was the most recent Latah County representative, but it represented all of the chambers within North Idaho, from Lewiston, Grangeville, north to Canada. And the intent of that was that, many, as Gary had suggested, many of these legislators have never made it past McCall, maybe Reagan's, very unfamiliar with what drives our economy and what's so unique about these communities up north. So that was the impetus for putting these together. And it happens immediately following a state election. So given that we have state races in November, this is the year that falls on for the tour. We rotated between the northern counties, so Kootenai, Bonner, Benewah, Boundary. So we'll house it maybe some years in Coeur d'Alene or some years in Sandpoint. And then the other years we rotated down to the southern part of the northern region in Lewiston and Moscow. And so we're fortunate this year to co-host it with Lewiston. So we have the legislators here for 2.5 days. And typically the way the tour works, we have to raise about $100,000 to do this. Much of that is just for travel and lodging for the legislators. We don't pay for spouses, and others that want to join us, they're free to sign on board and attend as well, but it costs money to fly those legislators up. But we do it. And this year we're going to fly them into, unfortunately, we couldn't get a charter for less than about $50,000. So we're flying them in commercially into Spokane. We'll put them on some buses. We'll take them into Coeur d'Alene. They'll have lunch at North Idaho College. And again, there's some new construction on the North Idaho College campus, some pretty cool stuff going on there. And then we'll put them on Highway 95 and we'll bring them down here. So they'll get to see some of their transportation investment dollars at work around Sanders and that just south of Tensed. Which is good. Highway 95 is always a point of discussion, contention, and interest for us up in North Idaho. And then we have them here. We'll rest them up a little bit, and then we have dinner here in Moscow that evening. We'll work with the university on showcasing some of their great activities as well as the city. And again, that dinner is an opportunity for the city to talk about what's great in Moscow, whether it's urban renewal. I mean, it's anything, name your issues. The microphones are open, and that's the whole point. We provide access for our communities, for our businesses, to 90% of the legislature. Some of the issues that we've talked about as a planning committee. So since the North Idaho Chamber of Commerce members all got old and tired, there was still a lot of interest and support to continue this. It's too valuable to just say, you know what, it's too much work. We don't want to do it anymore. Our fear was that if we quit doing it, we'd never get it back. We'd never resurrect it. So there was commitment. So several of us at Avista, we have chamber directors both in Lewiston and Moscow. Coeur d'Alene is involved as well. Then some business leaders. University of Idaho has a representative with Joe Stegner, LCSC, Kathy Martin, and I'm trying to think, North Idaho College is also engaged. And we sort of custom tailor the agenda to reflect the communities where we're going to be hosting this. So in our case, we have them in Moscow, and we're going to share them for a day in Lewiston, so they'll get to showcase Clearwater Paper, Vista Outdoor Products, Idaho Forest Group, the LC campus, and what's going on with some of their programming as well, and Schweitzer, actually, too. But lots of things to talk about here. Let me just talk about, and some of the highlights that we've worked on here so far. We'll have some U of I tours. We will take them to MZ, and we'll talk about what this regional economy looks like in this community, as well as the entire North Idaho. Commerce Director Megan Ronk will join us there, and we'll also talk about some of the state incentives that are working. Again, many of these legislators don't have a lot of day-to-day interaction with commerce, so we want to make sure that this is focusing on business and what drives the economies here, education, higher ed, K-12, and what else is going on here. We'll look at Gritman's expansion and their investment in the community. We'll also take them through on the way back to the Spokane airport. We'll take them by the airport, our airport, and show them what 1 million cubic yards of soil looks like when it's moved, as well as the investment they are making and our local communities are making in that runway realignment. And then we'll also talk about shared workforce and some of the issues that we have, and we share with that shared economy with Schweitzer Engineering. We'll feed them lunch and then take them back. So there are many gaps in our itinerary so far that we open up for our communities and sponsors to engage with the legislators. And again, this is not like going to Boise with the Association of Idaho Cities or Counties. You truly get more faces and people in front of you in your community. It's really a cool opportunity to showcase what's so great about the communities. The uniqueness of Main Street in Moscow, the importance of the U of I campus, the power of urban renewal districts in our community. And also talk about, the role of entrepreneurs and small business. So agriculture is always a good topic here. Transportation, and of course, one of my favorites is water. And we engage them. And they give us money. They fund the projects. And much of that groundwork is created at these events, these tours. And so again, it's part lobbying, it's part advocacy, it's all about engagement with our state decision makers and our funders. We have JFAC, Joint Finance and Appropriation, that comes here occasionally in the summer on their tour, but again, I get an opportunity once in a while to talk economics with them, but it's about a 15-minute slot. So again, this is a 2.5-day opportunity to engage, and I invite all of you to be a part of that in some form or fashion. We have opportunities for you to ride on the buses, to sit next to legislators, to focus on the committees with the committee members that are important and germane to the issues that you want to be engaged in. So how do we fund this $100,000? We have lots of corporate sponsors. My company, Avista, and Schweitzer actually seeded some startup capital to fund a paid position. Jerry DeLange, she is an actual City of Hayden councilwoman, and she is our organizer in putting the tour together for us. So Avista and Schweitzer seeded that money to pay her salary to put this event on. And then we solicit lots of corporate support from Monsanto, Clearwater Paper, Potlatch, Hecla Mining, McGregor, Simplot, Idaho Forest Groups, Bennett Lumber, Palouse Commercial. Some of our local support is coming from Bennett Lumber, Palouse Commercial Real Estate, Gritman, iMinerals, UP Railroad, and EMSI. So that's just a few. Our higher ed sponsors, the University of Idaho and LCSC, often do in-kind, and they provide meals and some of those services. Our public patron support of Lewiston, Latah County is going to provide some funding this year. We'll ask you here in a minute to provide some as well. And our chambers provide both cash and in-kind support for those as well. So again, it's an opportunity that only comes once, as Gary said, every 4 years. And it really is a lot of fun and very powerful and meaningful. And again, much of the public process is about impressions and relationships, and there are few opportunities that are so deep and rich than the tour. So with that, I'd ask the city to consider sponsoring at the $5,000 level, and that will truly help us, and that provides access at the banquet, gets you a table, and just gets you lots of time to engage with our legislators. Oftentimes also, we have state agencies that join us, transportation, water resources, certainly commerce is always there, labor, agriculture. So again, and we'll let you know ahead of time. We'll provide you updated itinerary lists and things that you want the legislators to see in this community. We are wide open. So with that, I will stand for any questions.
Thank you, Paul. Questions for Paul? Catherine?
So thank you for coming to Public Works and Finance and taking my questions there. So I wanted to follow up with you about the access for communication. You said the night of the dinner. So this is the pay-to-play opportunity. So how do we get the community members that aren't part of a business into the dinner. That,
Well-
we have so many nonprofits in our community.
Mayor, Councilwoman, there are certain, you can buy tickets to the banquet if you're a community member, you're here in Moscow and you want to attend the banquet. But again, the city as a sponsor has a table, so you can bring your council and we'll make accommodations to ensure that everyone representing the city of Moscow has access that night. But it isn't just at the dinner. That's often fun with the governor and lots of other folks there, but it's really times where you can sit with somebody on the bus, and we even tell people, hey, meet them in Spokane at the airport and sit next to somebody that you've kind of identified as somebody you want to just chew on their ear for a while and talk about a topic like education funding. Target the JFAC members, target the education committee members. So there's lots of opportunities to sort of insert yourself not only at the dinner, but
Right.
all through the 2.5 days.
So to follow up, you had mentioned that you talked to Greg Bailey. So are they going to be, is a representative from the school district going?
Oh, we certainly hope so. And I'm not sure if, Gina, if you've had any conversations with him, but yeah, again, career technical education is huge. That's on the legislators' radar this year, and funding that more robustly, and always education is near and dear to many, and especially in this community, that education is such an important economic driver here.
Other questions for Paul?
Yeah.
Jim, you were in that session as well.
Yeah.
Walter's not here with us tonight, but you were.
Right, and Catherine as well, and I think Paul's done a great job of pitching his project here, and I'm certainly in support of it. I think it's great to get these people that, like you said, may never get up here if we don't bring them up here, and if we don't have eye-to-eye contact with them, or they don't have eye-to-eye contact with what goes on here, it's certainly out of sight, out of mind when it comes time to make decisions about funding for things. So I think it's well worth the investment.
Art?
Yeah, from my experience down in Boise with the Association of Idaho Cities meetings, there seems to be a certain myopia that extends the legislature's vision about as far as McCall. And having the opportunity to have them up here and actually talk to them on our turf for a change is very beneficial for us, I think. And I think this would be money very well spent in helping raise our profile with some of the legislatures from down the south and southeast.
So, and I'm in favor of having people come. I just wanted, as we discussed, more contact with the public entities. But I see that what you've clarified tonight, it has more of a focus of economic, transportation, and water.
Mayor, Councilwoman, not necessarily. I mean, I think the community can really prioritize what you want to engage the legislators.
So how do we do that?
So, but I guess maybe let me ask you, so you said the community, so are you thinking, well, is there a time where I can invite some of my community folks to meet with them?
Yes.
Again, it's logistically, there may be some challenges with that, but we open up all of the meetings and functions, so anybody is willing and is certainly has the ability to buy a ticket to a dinner or register to take the tour.
Okay.
So we don't preclude anybody from attending. So in fact,
Okay.
we encourage that.
Okay.
Then we do get locals that hop on the bus and hang with us for a day or two. So again, and I can get you information about how that works, the mechanics behind
Sure,
that.
that'd be
So,
great. Thank you.
Yeah. No, the whole point of this is, we want Moscow to be as well represented as we possibly can. And so, yeah, I mean, the challenge is that there are perceptions in the legislature about northern Idaho, that this helps dispel.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a constant battle, as many of you know.
Yes, it is, Paul.
Thank you for taking my questions.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, I'd like to move approval of the sponsorship of the North Idaho Legislative Tour in the amount of $5,000 and authorize that funding from the legislative non-prioritized projects.
I will second that.
Okay, we've got a motion by Art and a second by Gina to approve the sponsorship of North Idaho Legislative Tour in the amount of $5,000 and authorize the funding from the legislative non-prioritized projects. I'll start the roll, John.
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you, Paul, and you got it.
Paul.
You bet. Thanks for the presentation. We will move on to item number 8 now, which is the Downtown Public Restroom Rebid Award. Dwight Curtis, you have the podium.
Okay, I'll be there in a second. Let me find it here. Nope, that's not it. Well, this is, yeah, the wrong one's up here, but this will, it'll have the same information on it.
It was. That's the one from yesterday.
There's a story to it here,
Thanks.
Yep.
Okay, well, thank you. And once again, we are visiting the Downtown Restroom Project, and as you'll recall that back in 2015, we had a steering committee that tackled one of the city council goals, which was to investigate and come up with a recommendation to the council for a restroom, a public restroom facility for the downtown area. And we went from there to a Design West Architects design that was approved by the City Council in December of 15. Then we went out to bid, and it's just this last March, and the low bid for that was $191,600. The bids were rejected by the City Council in April of this year, and then we asked the council for direction to whether to rebid or whatever direction you desired. The council in July gave direction to rebid the project, which we did here in September, this last month. And last week, we brought the bid recommendation to Public Works Finance Committee, who recommended that this be brought forward to the full council for more discussion and a decision. And here we are tonight. So just a quick refresher. Here is where the facility would be located, and this is Friendship Square right here, and Jackson Street over here, and Main Street to the right. Just a close-up look at how this would fit onto that sidewalk, Jackson Street to the left. And using the Design West model, this is an overview of what that facility would look like. A distinctive male-female sides with a plumbing alley in the middle. Privacy wings out here on the front. As you can see from a side view, it would have a shed roof, and looking from the front, the male-female sides with the signage, drinking fountains.
Hey, Dwight.
Yes.
When you have the doors and could you go 2 slides back? And where it says the privacy, will you show me the privacy? Okay. So they're facing north. So they're facing towards
These
the
would be
building.
facing south.
South.
It'd Depends on which way you're looking at it.
Yeah. I could have oriented it this other way, but it's just the way that they had their writing. So you would have to read sideways, so I just went this way. So south is to the right.
Oh.
North is, or just the opposite, I'm sorry.
The opposite, yeah.
Okay.
You just have to read the arrow. I just need to read the arrow.
I'm just
How's
curious, was there a concern which way the
No,
flow
it's just
would come?
no. I was just trying to imagine it in the parking lot, which way the
the flow would come?
yeah,
stuff?
just which way it was. I was just trying to put it in perspective of when you enter, are you facing north or south?
Okay.
That was all.
The entrance faces Moscow Hotel.
Yes, that's what I thought.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I was just verifying in my mind. Sorry. Go
That's
ahead.
all right. And so here is the layout of the bids on the rebid that we just got. Golis, as you can see, for the base bid, came in at $198,500, along with their bid alternate prices. And you can see quality contractors below that. And, of course, with this, the breakdown of Golis at the $198,500. The water sewer tap fees is about $3,100, or not fees, but the cost to do that in-house. And then the construction administration by Design West. I have a 10% contingency. Hopefully we won't have to use much of that, if any. And also the 1% arts. And so that would bring the project up to $233,644. Funding, we have $167,250 left in our budget for that. Moscow URA has committed $20,000 toward this, and that's for this design with Design West. And this private citizen donor, $10,000 with the same requirement. Total of funding for this is $197,250. So it leaves us, I think it's about a $36,000 shortfall. And then we do have a possible additional $7,000 funding, and that would be for bid alternates 2 and 4 from the Moscow URA. They meet, I think, later on this week. And so that would bring the interior ceramic tiles back to the project for $5,000, and the 2 skylights for an additional $2,000. And so staff's recommendation is to award, to accept the low bid from Golis for the construction of the downtown restroom project, and award the contract in the base bid amount of $198,500. And also to recommend approval of the construction administrative services agreement with Design West Architects in the amount of $8,550. And with that, open for any questions or comments.
Okay. Art?
Do we have any idea what the start and finish times might be?
Well, the contract or the agreement gives them 180 days. Because we have the winter time here. So it would be, I guess it would depend on their schedule, but within that. And so start would be as soon as I can get the permits all squared away, and then we give the notice to proceed, and so they would jump right on it.
And once the project has begun, is there penalties for running past the end time?
There
Because
are,
with a bid
yes.
like this, I would expect that the performance would be spot on.
180 days is a long time for this small of a project. Mm-hmm. So there are, right off the top, I couldn't tell you what that amount is, what the penalty is, but there's a penalty per day after the deadline. And also, what we're estimating here is that, they'll get the shell on this done right away, and once they've got the roof on and everything, then they can work on the interior despite the weather. So, or regardless of what the weather would be. So, talking with some of the contractors even as we were going through the bid process even, everybody was shooting for trying to have this available and running before farmer's market would start next spring. So.
Jim?
Dwight, I don't know if this may be a question for more Gary than you, but have we identified where the additional funding would have to come from to make up the difference between what we have budgeted, the additional funding sources that are on the screen and the, worst case scenario, 233.6? Where are those funds? Do we have those funds located?
Yeah, the funds are accumulated in general fund capital projects. So we have an amount of money that we hold for projects that come up unexpectedly the council wants to pursue. Council budgets for some of that fund every year in the annual budget. So the $36,000, if it were necessary, and as you pointed out at Public Works and Finance Committee, that 10% we hope not to get there. I mean, this project is small enough that we should be able to, contractors should anticipate getting in pretty close to budget. So at that $36,000 is accumulated in that same line item.
What's the total number of that fund? It
depends on the year. Last year, I believe it had 275,000, if memory serves. I think this year it was 400 because we had a project that was not constructed last year. And there are other projects. Yeah, this is the project.
Yeah,
so
well,
that money, those monies that are carried over included that amount of money.
Okay, so out of that 200 and whatever, 167 of it is what was already budgeted for this. Okay, thank you.
I'd be happy to give you an exact number.
No, I don't. Doesn't need to be down to the cent. I just wondered what percentage of what was left over we were using for this project and what position that puts us in for other things that might come up.
If I may, the impact would be about the $36,000 because we had an amount budgeted. The URAs with their amount and the private donation, the difference is about $36,000 if the entire maximum project gets constructed. So that's the actual impact, the non-anticipated impact.
John?
Could somebody explain to me what in the world Design West is going to do for $8,550?
Well, they are going to do construction administrative services, and so that's a wide variety of things, but just about every day that can be out there, there can be questions, design questions, material questions, things like that. These guys are the ones that designed it. They know the answers. If we were to do that in-house, it could be enough to shut the project down while we're researching out to find out what those answers are. It's a very efficient way to make a project keep flowing when you have the designer as actually the one doing the construction administration. It's a very common practice as well.
And we've already paid Design West a rather large sum of money to design this. Damn, we're in the wrong business. They got us coming and going.
Jim, did you have another question?
No, sir.
Ma'am,
Catherine?
I move that we accept the low bid from Golis Construction for construction of the downtown restroom project and award construction contract in the base bid amount of $198,500 and approve the construction administration services agreement with Design West Architects in the amount of $8,550.
Second.
Okay. We've got a motion by Catherine and a second by Gina to accept the low bid from Golis Construction for the construction of the downtown restroom project and award construction contract in the base bid amount of $198,500 and approve the construction administrative services agreement with Design West Architects in the amount of $8,550. John?
I don't know whether this is the time, but I will, if I could have a minute or so.
Go ahead.
I was not at all happy with the amount of money the city was going to spend on this project at $150,000, and then it came in at $170,000, and I voted against it. Then it came in at $191,000, and I voted against it. And it seems to continually go up, and we get nothing more for the money that we're spending. And I think there are alternatives that we could go with that would present us with a finished product, and it may not look exactly like what was shown on the board, but it would be a public restroom. It would work. It would have a brick facade. Maybe it wouldn't be made out of brick, but it would have a brick facade. And we would not be spending the amount of money that we are going to be spending now. And I'm sorry, I can't go along with it. I can't vote for it. Now, I realize, looking up and down the row here, that, I'm swimming upstream on this. But that's essentially, that is, I think it's, I'm not against a downtown restroom. I'm against the cost of this downtown restroom. And I think I'm the only one. That's, so be it. Thank you, Bill.
You're welcome. Other comments? I'll start the roll with Catherine.
Aye.
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 No.
Okay, so it passed 4-1. So we will move on. That is the end of our meeting. Thank you, Dwight.
Thank you.
End of our meeting. We'll start into reports, and I will start with you, Jim.
Well, let's see. Administrative Committee, pretty much everything was on the regular agenda or consent agenda, so I think we've covered all that. And I was also at the Public Works Finance Committee, and we pretty much covered everything that was discussed there in the regular agenda. The only other meeting I've been to was the annual meeting of the Clearwater Resource Conservation and Development Council, and which I'm no longer president of as of that meeting. And things are going along pretty well there. There's a new strategic planning initiative going on there, and we've got a marketing plan going on to improve the awareness of what the council provides, and so we can get maybe more youth conservation core activity going on, and other potential 501c3 organizations use the council services that might not be aware of it now. So things are moving in a positive direction there, and it's a very financially solvent organization now. It's one of the most financially solvent ones in the United States, so we can be proud of that we're associated with that. And that's all I have.
Okay, Jana.
Again, similar to Jim, I was at all these meetings and we covered most of it. I will also say that Nancy Tribble stole my thunder. The only other meeting I was at was the Parks and Rec Commission, so we're in good shape.
John?
I really don't have anything. My meetings for this month haven't started. They start tomorrow. And so I don't have anything, and the other meetings that I attended have already been covered.
Okay. Art?
Yeah, the Sustainable Environment Commission met and discussed a good many things, still looking at the objectionable pesticides that may or may not be used by Parks and Rec. They're still looking into that, and are looking to propose potentially partnering with the PCEI for a demonstration project for sustainable management of parks over at the Lola Clyde site, which would be kind of clever. Sustainability report is that office recycling is proceeding in the city. 8 Wisescapes have been done as part of the water conservation program, and 18 are pending. So far, 31 toilet rebates, but there's a lot more applicants rummaging around in the background on that one. Ongoing with the Water Summit, as was already mentioned, the city recycling video is almost finished. They did mention that the U of I relamping effort, switching fluorescents to LEDs, they've gotten 15,000 of the bulbs replaced in 2 weeks. Wow. Somebody's doing a lot of twisting back and forth. Otherwise, I emceed the Recovery Center's fair out at the fairgrounds on Saturday evening, attended by 82 people, and that went over very well. So it looks like the Recovery Center is doing very, very well for themselves. And in a aside, I was watching the CBS Evening News tonight, and they were discussing imaginative ways to bust people for texting while driving. And they had one city that had cops out with cardboard signs as panhandlers. You know, usually it says, give money, and it says, we're watching to see if you're texting, right there on the signs. And they were just popping people right and left. And Moscow, Idaho came up in the report as using school buses as a vantage point from which to see if people are texting or not. So Moscow makes the CBS Evening News tonight.
So, Catherine?
Mike did a wonderful job at planning and zoning of taking something that doesn't seem very exciting like PUDs and takes the commission through it all and does a great job. So my hat's off to him. I really appreciate it. And I just wanted to thank the IT people. Every time I go in there, they drop everything. They work with me so quickly with the iPad or phone or whatever device I'm bringing in. They've been super. And I just wanted to let you all know that was great.
Okay, thank you. A couple of things I wanted to mention. One counselor was not with us tonight. Walter Steeg got kind of banged up a little bit. He is okay. Nothing broke on him, but he was a little tough looking today is what he told me, so that's why he's not here this evening. We wish him well as his wife, who had a hip replacement today. So both Walter and Mary get well soon, and we look forward to seeing you soon. A couple of the meetings I was at, we had an airport board meeting on last Wednesday on 9/28, went through the usual things, and somebody Paul Kimmel made a mention about 1 million cubic yards of dirt. It's been over 1 million cubic yards of dirt moved already, which is a lot of dirt. It's amazing. And they still got another 5 million to go, so it's a long process. Downtown block party was held on Friday on 9:30, and that turned out to be an absolute wonderful success. We had a number of different players throughout the city that participated and helped with that, and it was one of the funnest nights that I've had in a long time. It was just a good time, and it was a homecoming parade the next day on 10/1. And I got to tell you, the city staff, but it was so much excitement in the entire town this weekend that it was really fun to see, and that's the kind of things we need to see here in Moscow, Idaho. And just a reminder, on 10/5, we've got the Water Summit at Schweitzer Engineering from 4:30 to 8. I will be going there. I will give a small presentation. Maud Barlow, I'm really looking forward to her presentation. She's a keynote speaker. So any of you that could come would be awesome. It would be a terrific time. And Gary, I know we've got a quarterly breakfast in Colfax we need to talk about. You want to mention that, and I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, sir. On the 5th, this Wednesday, 7:30 at Colfax. Events on Main is the venue. If you would like to go, please let Judy in my office know tomorrow. That'll be the last time. In fact, she'll probably have to do a little wrangling to get you in if you haven't already said you're going to go. But that is, in fact, the quarterly regional breakfast meeting, and that's put on by the
Is that
Whitman County Commissioners, yes.
And that's right on Main Street?
Right on Main Street.
Same place they had it a few years ago?
You bet. Okay. And usually there's some carpooling going on, so we can make that happen. Also on Thursday night, the 6th at 5:30, the mayor is hosting the Orchid Awards. It's put on by the Historic Preservation Commission. So that's always a good time, and that'll be at the 1912 Center Fisk Room. Like to report on the Farmers Market Commission meeting. If Walter was here, he would talk about it. Occurred last week at 4 o'clock on Wednesday, where Steve Peterson, an economist from the University of Idaho, gave a report on the economic impact analysis of the Moscow Farmers Market. Gave a presentation that was filmed, so we will make that available, and I just received the final report, finished report this afternoon. So we will get that out to people as well. I know people have an interest in that, and we'll get that posted on our website as well. With that, I want to thank Mayor Lambert for attending a healthy grab-and-go employee lunch last Thursday. The idea is we've got a very active wellness committee, and this was one of the things they wanted to do. Karen Potter, the administrative assistant from the police department, kind of spearheaded that. We had a nutritionist come in and talk, and
show folks some healthy eating things. The mayor, we corralled him to come down and have some raw almonds and pecans and some meatless meatless lasagna, as I recall. So anyway, that was fun, and it was a great time for the employees. So I hope people learned lots. And with that, that's all I have.
Well, that healthy eating lifestyle is good for all of us, so. Well, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Boom, we're out of here, 8:29. Thank you, everybody.